Tarlov has been guilty of many sins throughout his life, including misdeeds of theft, dishonesty and violence. But one thing he could never have been accused of, amongst all of his various transgressions, is being naive. As with Comrade Antonov, who marches ahead of him now, past the endless cells of the city's jail, Tarlov's instincts have always served him well. The lofty ambitions of the Bolshevik Party were quick to catch the attention of the two men, amidst a wildly chaotic political landscape, both of whom have amassed numerous criminal convictions during their lives, needing to ensure they align themselves to the winning side. Beside them, prisoners recoil as the two militiamen pass by, the wooden stave Antonov carries clattering noisily against the cell bars. They know they can do nothing to alter their fates. The list held in Tarlov's hands has already decided which of them are to be hauled from their cells. Within minutes, the 5 detainees in question have been removed from their confinement and are marched out of the cell block towards the guard room, where younger members of the city guard wait to see which of their number will accompany their senior colleagues and the prisoners for tonight's task. The occupants of this room are mainly rural boys, either enthralled or terrified by the madness that the last 12 months has exposed them to. Only a few of their number still possess a gentler, more idealistic background, like the one who Antonov motions across this evening, the boy grabbing his rifle and dutifully falling in behind the column as it makes its way out of the prison and into the cold, dark night. Wearing only grimy vests or tattered shirts, the 5 captives hesitate for a moment as the freezing nighttime temperatures reach forth to embrace them. But the encouraging jabs of the rifles held by their captors prove sufficient to encourage them onwards, away from the jail. With little oil or firewood available for the city's lamps, their journey through the waiting backstreets proves hazardous as it is terrifying. The small knot of men having to pause whenever one of their number trips or falls, under the ever-watchful gaze of their escorts. Neither Tarlov nor his colleagues know the crimes these men have committed to earn their captivity. In truth, they do not care. Like countless others they have already escorted from the prison, it matters not. Be it for political, criminal, or convenient reasons, fate has decreed it. Each of these men has been deemed an opponent to the revolution, just as those who have been selected before them. It falls now to anonymous agents such as Tarlov and Antonov to remove them from society, so as not to endanger the glorious change that has been enacted. It's a duty Tarlov has embraced without protest, keenly aware that to do anything else, other than to assist the revolution, is to become an enemy to it. He cannot help but notice his colleague seems to derive far more enjoyment from this privileged position, drinking ever more heavily with each passing nightly ritual. But both men are united in their understanding they must demonstrate their loyalty to those who now sit in judgment over them, or risk being designated themselves as enemies of the new society. The slow journey through the city lasts a little over an hour, with no other living soul encountered along the way. Much like the prisoner escorts, the people of Petrograd have quickly learned the consequences for those who break the curfew imposed by the authorities. Their final destination lies on the banks of the Neva River, a small and previously innocuous piece of land, now keenly avoided by the rest of the city's population. At first, those arriving at the river's edge seem confused, not understanding why they've been actively herded away from a nearby footbridge. Before their eyes fall on the scuff marks on the ground nearest the water's edge, and the piles of heavy chain link, which lie coiled up on the rubble nearby. With a drunken flourish, Antonov berates the exhausted captives, informing them there will be no trial for their unknown crimes, but that punishment will be forthcoming. The first of the group he approaches regards him with incomprehension, the captive offering no resistance, as his eyes nervously fall upon the revolver Tarlov has now produced. It takes little time for Antonov to secure lengths of thick metal chain around the prisoner's waist and hands, and even less to berate him further, before tossing the hapless soul vindictively into the river. No sooner has the struggling figure disappeared from sight, a second is in the process of being chained, still too bewildered to offer any resistance. More effort is needed to dispatch the remaining trio, all of whom either physically resist or beg for their lives, before they too are hurled into the waiting river. The bulky restraints that have been secured to their bodies, dragging them quickly down beneath the dirty waters, with no possible hope of salvation. All throughout these grim proceedings, Tarlov has watched on impassively, unenthusiastically waving around the pistol he carries, when needed in order to expedite this process. The deed having been completed, he looks across from the drunken figure of Antonov, who still stands bellowing raucous laughter out into the night, to the third of their number. This youth, who occupies an undefined point either side of his 16th birthday, staring out into the river, still apparently trying to process the savagery of the act. All of a sudden, the boy's eyes open wide, and he stumbles backwards a short way, a look of horror now crossing his features. Turning to follow the youth's gaze, Tarlov is surprised to see that Antonov's raucous laughter has subsided. He is instead now stood, with a subdued look on his face. Ever so slowly, Tarlov's gaze travels down his fellow guard's body, to the right leg, where a length of twisted and decaying metal is wound tightly around the base of the limb. The rest of this rusted chain leads down the riverbank, off into the water, offering no explanation for how it has emerged or secured itself to the guard. Out of nowhere, a second chain suddenly explodes forth from the river, wrapping itself firmly around the opposing leg, before both bonds go taut, dragging Antonov down to the floor. The guard's voice is shrill and pleading, as his fingernails scrape and shatter on the stony ground, his eyes wild, pleading for help from his fellows. But before Tarlov can move a muscle, a third metal chain now erupts from the water, caked in silt and moss, wrapping itself around the struggling man's waist. There is just time for one last desperate scream from Antonov, before he's then in and under the water. The half-consumed bottle of vodka he had been holding and had set to one side, being the only evidence of his role in the proceedings that have just taken place. Still holding the revolver down at his side, Tarlov cautiously paces towards the riverbank, where Antonov had been stood. Then he peers out into the slow-moving waters of the Neva, his eyes narrowing as he scans for any sign of the missing escort. At first there is nothing. Then through the evening gloom he spies a dark form, suspended just below the water's surface. It is the right size and shape for a human being, but difficult to define, seeming to recede deeper as Tarlov tries ever harder to focus on it. Then he spies another, a short distance behind the first, and then a further, all maintaining their position in the river's flow, seemingly regarding him. For a moment or two, the night is silent, as if some wordless conversation or understanding is passing between those under the waters and the man watching them. With a shiver, Tarlov motions violently for his fellow guard to join him, before then shoving the boy physically across to the nearby piles of chain. For the next few minutes, he and his young charge desperately shove and push the heavy metal links off the side of the river wall into the water, before finally stopping to regain their strength, having disposed of the last of the chain lengths that had been stacked there, ready to use. Out in the Neva, the three shapes slowly begin to sink back deeper into the depths of the river, until nothing more can be seen of them. Reaching into his jacket pocket for a cigarette, Tarlov finds it difficult to light the item, as his hands continue to tremble and shake, struggling to break free of the memory of the rusted and worn chains that dragged his compatriot to his death, and how close he came to sharing the same fate. Having passed the cigarette to his remaining comrade, he waits until the terrified youth has coughed and spluttered his way through the offering, before he asks his name. Then he explains to Comrade Sorokin what the likely result would be of them sharing what has taken place here tonight with any other person, how they will both need to find a way to avoid this duty, moving forwards, whatever grim method is evolved by their masters to replace it. Then he reaches down for the vodka bottle, also offering that to the younger man, before they set off, back towards the jail.